Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Salam, salam. Alright, so we're continuing our overall book review of this very compelling book. It is by Hamza Yusuf, is commentary on the Imam Mawlud's Matharat al Qulub, and it was originally a Patreon requested book, but because I closed the Patreon due to the harassment from the stalker hackers, we'll just put off on that for now, but we're going to continue to read the book either way. Alright, so let's begin. We were dealing with how the Prophet, peace be upon him, talked about how supplication is a very powerful option for people who are facing oppression and can't really seem to get away from it, right? So let's begin. But say that is all they have is rather ironic, given there is no power or might except with God. Sincere supplication is very powerful, and God answers the prayers of those who call on Him earnestly. When oppressed, the cries of even an atheist are answered, according to the sound hadith. Now, the atheist part might be like, depending on, who knows? We'll see, but that's up to God. Allah knows best. Alright. Sidhi Ahmad Zaruk, another name here for us, holds that heedlessness is blindness to the providential order that God has set in place and sustains at every instant. Okay, so heedlessness is something I think many of us have had experiences with. Indeed, I know I have. I mean, there's been times where I was quite heedless and probably should have thought something through, and I didn't do it, and, well, it really messes things up. A person may say, after recovering from an illness, "How wonderful is this medication? It saved my life." This is heedlessness of the fact that one of the attributes of God is that He is the healer. This is not to say that people should not take medicine, but it is important to be aware that it is God who has placed in this world remedies for our bodies. So here you can focus on the dynamicism of the language you select, right? So you appreciate the modern medicine, but again, as we have learned, nothing can aid you if Allah doesn't will it. And if you have an appointed term on earth, no one can stop it. So whether you go through a plague or you survive it, it's all accordance to the Maker, and the Maker is the one who granted the skills to the person and allowed them to have the brain capacity and overall creativity and diligence to carry out such a medical process. So you can thank the medication, like, well, I'm glad it exists, but you should give all your praise to God. At least that's what I would say, right? And that every bit of this world is in constant dependence on God. So this is an interesting aspect, because if you think about the electric grid, because the more I've been reading about just how fragile our wired world is, right? Especially having recently dealt with lunatic hackers, you start to really realize all these electronic devices are quite freaky. Just the fact that there was a demonstration where somebody could hack into a Tesla and drive it into a car. I mean, I'm in another car or tree. They can hack anything with an electric signal, right? Take over your TV, take over your smart devices. Has a radio impulse. There's back doors both in the software and hardware. So, I mean, we get very confident and egotistical because we have all these labs, we got all these laboratories, but even in apocalypse movies, the labs sit there useless once a war breaks out, and if you can't have your electricity to fund your computers, and, someone's able to block even out those signals or do a physical attack on that, you're back at square one. You're back in the wilderness, right? You're back at your Stone Age existence. So truly, we have to realize that we are dependent. And every apocalypse movie shows you that, but we like to forget it, right? Because we're like, oh, it's just a movie. The grid will never fall. Oh, robotics will always save us. And you have to be careful, right? You have to be careful. The properties of every chemical are in obedience. They do their work because of God's commands. The heedless forget that God truly holds the heavens and the earth, and that He is the owner and sustainer of the universe. So here, they say, oh, well, how is this chemical under the obedience of God? Well, the elements that those chemical engineers use are usually found without, just existing. You have to find them, get them, create it in the lab, have the electricity. You have to have all those systems in place in order to find that. And, man, the things humans have created to hurt each other, it's quite insane. And when a lot of the stuff that we've done ourselves with our own hands concerning chemicals, they've caused a lot of problems, even cleaning chemicals, right? Oh, well, we're so good because we created this really clean chemical that makes your tile perfectly clean. And then, oh, well, if over sustained use of 10 years, if you don't have proper ventilation, you develop some type of throat cancer from it. Chemicals are quite a utility, but man, they sure do cause a lot of problems. Just look at that guy who sued Monsanto for the Ready Roundup pesticide. For years, people would get banned on Facebook for criticizing Monsanto and for saying that their chemicals cause problems both in the vegetation but also within the bodies of the people who consume non-organic food. And now we see the evidence of that, and now people are vindicated. But the scientists created a powerful chemical that also created problems in humans, which now the scientists in the medical field have to solve. So, really makes you look at the world in a different way. Whatever is seen or unseen, large or minute, the believer who recovers from any illness says, all praise is for God who has healed me. The difference in responses is the difference between sentience and oblivion. So, there's been a lot of comedy about, even when Rick from the Rick and Morty series, he's floating through space, he's saying a prayer to God to keep him alive. Then once he gets alive, he reverts back to being an atheist. There's some very witty irony and comedic truth in that, to the point where we really have to recognize that we ourselves really are arrogant because we have comfortability, right? You can ignore God when your life is comfortable, and when it's not comfortable, you start crying out, and even if you don't want to admit it, for some aid from somewhere, So, if you get sick, you need to ask for aid, and if you don't, and you exit this domain, that might have been better for you. You never know. Only Allah knows. Imam Mawlud holds that covetousness is the root cause of many iniquities. So, we ourselves have to work on covetousness. A lot of people covet too much, and then they don't realize if you covet and you get what you want, a lot of the times you don't want it anymore. A person who slanders another does so for some perceived gain. Yeah, you have to watch out for that. Really watch out for if you start to get too focused on slandering instead of leading by example. It gets to be weird. He desires, for example, to instill negative thoughts in others toward the victim of his slander. The covetousness can be so overwhelming that it occupies one's mind during prayer. See that? That's how you kind of know you've gone too far. Is if it's interrupting your prayers and you keep thinking about this person, that person, you want to respond to them, you want to do this, and that, you're kind of losing the way. You're letting them live inside your head too much, right? You gotta watch out for that. It also leads to insincere praise of others in order to derive some benefit from them. Okay, yes, don't praise people insincerely. You have to be careful. People who praise without a sincere heart, those are some tricksters for you. Most salespeople, for example, will say just about anything, lies and flattery, to sell their wares. Oh, you know what? That is, I worked in retail for a while, and yeah, sometimes you want to say the truth to somebody, or but you're not allowed to. Car salesmen are famous for that. Very famous for that. For this reason, the honest merchant will be raised with the martyrs on the day of judgment. See that? Being an honest merchant. Really saying the so. I tried to do that like when I was a server. I really tried hard to make sure that I would recommend what is good on the menu, what is bad on the menu. I would be like, I had to be careful. A lot of servers will just lie, like, oh, what do you recommend? How does this taste? What is this? What is that? And in reality, it's just like, it's garbage, that meal. And I want to tell them the truth. But some managers will be like, say everything is good, recommend everything, get the sale, pitch this, pitch that. But I always tried to be a little different, I tried to, really recommend what I thought was good. And then when I was honest about it, and they asked me questions concerning the entree, how it's prepared, its flavor profile, the acidity and such, I was able to quite distinctly lay out effectively why I believe it's the best option on the menu. And a lot of, customers who are foodies, they culinary review people, they would be like, oh, thank you for recommending that. I really appreciate that. And then they leave you a good tip. So it works out. You can feel it when your server is just like, whatever, Even with certain bartenders, I did bartending before. Now I won't do it. Obviously, that's haram. I'm not going to do it. But when you make a cocktail and then you get to talk to somebody, you have to try the whiskeys. Old grandpas come in, they ask you, like, they just got done playing golf or they just got off their sailboat. They ask you, like, which, whiskey do you recommend? And then they grill you. Like, oh, does it have hints of raisin? Was it aged in charred oak barrels? Where's it from? And you really had to kind of lay it out. And they could tell if you were just trying to sell them the most expensive one, right? Because there was like a Japanese whiskey that was very expensive. Very, very, very expensive. And some whiskey connoisseurs would come in and be like, you're just trying to sell me the expensive one, but it tastes like a rubber tire, and you're like, oh. So I know that's a different example, right? It's kind of weird to use a alcoholic example in order to highlight a salesmanship, but I'm just letting you know that a lot of people, they'll just say anything, and that's what makes a bad salesman. I was pretty good at selling things, I was a telemarketer when I was like in high school, and we sold DVDs, DVD packages, and I had to work in one of those facilities, and you would cold call people and try to pitch them a subscription plan to a DVD service. It went out of business, but you had on the board like a certain amount of sales you had to have, and I'd get some, but I would be a good salesperson, to be honest. We had a manager, he was on the floor, he would just bulldoze people through the sales process, and sometimes the customers don't even know what they're saying, and before you know it, he has their information, is selling them something they didn't even understand. So being an honest merchant is important, truly, because think about the people who sell you a car. We call it a lemon, that's just crap, and it breaks down. That's why you have to be careful where you buy a car from. The honest merchant does not sacrifice his morality and ethics. If he is successful, he knows his success is from God. Look at that. So be honest in your dealings. Don't try to be a cut around, being a snake, trying to find ways you can get this deal, get that deal. Be careful, I think that's why sometimes I didn't get along with a lot of people who are in the stock market. The way they can pitch you on stocks and stuff, you're like, I don't know about you, man. The way they try to say, like, oh, it's, we have this chart that's going to show that it's going to give us this amount of dividends and yada, 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 yada. Sign up now for this broker fee and such. I don't know, man. It is interesting to observe the traditional cultures, especially in the Muslim world, that the marketplaces are comprised of rows of businesses dealing with the same product. That's interesting. I have to look that up, like on a travel vlog or something. In America, many would consider it foolish to open a business in proximity to another business already selling the same product. I have to kind of agree with that. I get really tired. Everybody got an Italian restaurant. I'm Italian, so it's like cool, but there would be, like, how many pizza joints do you need in the same block, right? Can we get some other kind of food here, please? I don't know. Or with fast food. Like when I lived in Utah, there was so many, like, fast food joints. And it's all, like, too corporate capital, It's just like, it was Burger King there. It's like, can we get some real food, I don't know. I think people make that joke about Starbucks. There's a Starbucks on every corner, a Pete's Coffee on every corner. Pizza's better, by the way. But the niche coffee shops are not really out there. But even then, you can get too many coffee shops. They all selling the same croissants. Or they all buy the same coffee beans. Over here, Equator coffee is very popular. And then you'll be like, does no one else sell any other type of coffee from a different corporation? Come on. So, he has a point. I like diversity in business. I don't know. Variety is better. But I understand that, like, there's this chart that shows how many companies own the same products. They just put different labels to give you the illusion of diversity. When in reality, it's the same corporation selling the same products. Like, you'll have 6 cans of tomatoes, all got a different minor corporate logo, but they're all owned by the same parent company. So there's that. But then you'd get into the semantics of, well, the flavors are different. So are they really the same? I don't know. You have to get talking about that. In Damascus, everyone knows where the marketplace for clothing is. There are dozens of stores strung together selling virtually the same material and fashions. Not only are those stores together, but when the time for prayer comes, the merchants pray together. Now that's cool. See, when I went for a job interview once, I had worked in some restaurants around there, and they were like, what is it? Do people poach each other's workers? Some bosses would be like, oh, we don't want our employees working at our competition. They'll trade recipes, they will steal ideas, they'll tell our secrets or whatever. We don't want to have our competitors' employees. That is interesting. Others didn't care. Like, okay, you're going to go work at, 2 blocks down at the next joint. You're going to do that. It's fine. As long as you show up for your schedule, that's it. But I know a lot of business owners, they only want you there all the time. I even had a boss who was like, I don't want you working anywhere else. How much do I have to pay you so that you don't work anywhere else, so you only work here a double shift? And I was like, I don't know, man. Like, some bosses are very adamant about you not working anywhere else. It's interesting. The protectionist of your capital, right? I mean, in SpongeBob, the older SpongeBob episodes, Mr. Krabs didn't want the chum bucket, right? And he wanted to protect his recipe, and he didn't want the competition. So, in our culture, we have an interesting aspect of that, that's for sure. They often attend the same study circles, have the same teachers, and are the best of friends. It used to be that when one person sold enough for the day, he would shut down, go home, and allow other merchants to get what they need. That is interesting. Shutting down your shop, being like, I made enough profit, go and get you some. Oh, I don't even think that'd be possible here. They want numbers every quarter. Increase. They want unlimited growth. And they'll hire whoever can promise that and deliver it. I mean, isn't that the function of the CEO? The shareholders want the CEO make that money. I want numbers. They see a decline, all right, switch out the CEO, right? They don't know. That's interesting. Monopoly. So monopoly in capitalism is the problem. You want the free market to have competition, to have competitive aims, but the monopolies take over too much. That's interesting. This is not make-believe or part of a utopian world. It actually happened. It's hard to believe that there were people like that on the planet. They exist to this day, but to a lesser extent. They are now old, and many of their sons have not embraced the beauty of what that way of doing business is. Oh, well. Wow. I don't know. That'd be a hard thing to pitch. I couldn't imagine that. I mean, I had a boss once, man. This dude was making hardcore money. I mean, just we were putting in the numbers, and he would one day he's screaming in my face. I could feel his spit on me. He's like, "I need 1,500 per hour," and I was like, 1,500 per hour. Get him in. It's just like, like he wanted that money. It's just amazing. Like, we couldn't fit more people into the restaurant. It's like, it's so full. There's a line out the door, and he's just like, go, 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 money, money, money. And the cooks, man, they're sweating. I mean, it's amazing. All the line cooks are with cooking, and the dishwashers are spraying and washing, and it's insane. And it's like the energy, the movement, like, it was just like enrapturing, and he's just like, money, money. And at the end of the night, I'm so glad I never had to be the one to count the money. But it's a horrible job. If you're working for a place that's busy, you gotta count everything out. Check it. I mean, it's a lot of work. So much paperwork and detail. It's a mess. And that boss, he really, money, money, money. I want the money, money, money. Even on holidays, some of them bosses, man. It's like, I get it now because I'm Muslim, I don't care about the holidays anymore. But it used to be something in America where there's a holiday, you give your employees off so they can relax. And that's not what they wanted. It was not what they wanted. It's intense. What do you think? Is that something where all you fans, what would your boss say to that? I mean, that sounds pretty cool. It sounds humbling. I wish I could do that, but we have a very cutthroat type of business strategy in America. Outdo your competitor at any means. I mean, Walmart, they don't do high price, they do low price to undercut their opponents, right? And then force their employees to go on welfare so that they can maximize their profits even further while pushing off not paying their employees well so that they can, have good numbers for their shareholders. It's quite interesting. Amazon, Walmart, McDonald's. The whole idea of wages now has really been coming up a lot. And then wages concerning the profits of a company as a whole. It is quite interesting. And then you get into, job skills and the necessity of such, which is a whole nother arena, but this is a pretty cool thing to think about. So an honest merchant is going to do pretty well on the day of resurrection, the day of judgment. They will learn. So if any of us have a business, try to do your best and deal with it. It's pretty cool.